Well, I mean, my name is Jason Woodside, and um, two-time Canadian oyster shucking champion, shucking oysters. It'll be 27 years as of this January, and it's November 10th, sorry, 2024 right now. So I'm here with Gardner Douglas. I've had the opportunity to host Gardner Douglas for a few tours of PEI oysters, and he stayed at my house, and we've shucked together at the PEI Shellfish Festival. And Gardner's had me on the show as well once or twice to talk about a few different topics. And I had some questions for Gardner, and I'm going to write an article about him, about you. And so I'm hoping that you don't mind answering my questions.
It's going to be a fun conversation. I am also going to be putting this on the Oyster Ninja podcast. So, folks, get ready for a fun ride. And I am ready to, I guess, talk instead of ask the questions as usual, per usual. And we did this one time before with Rachel from Precious Oyster. And I think it turned out to be a good episode. And my good friend here reached out to me about the idea, and you know, let's make it happen, Captain. So here we are. I hope you guys enjoy. And Jason, thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you, Gardner. I during your last podcast episode, you talked a little bit. You explained sort of how you came to be in oysters. And so my first question to you was initially, how did you first get interested in the art of oyster shucking? And what led you to pursue it as a career and to make a resume of it?
That's, you know, first of all, I'm going to say, when people say that's a good question, but I really do mean it this time, simply because the way you worded it, it's a difference between getting into oysters and getting into the art of oyster shucking. To me, the art of oyster shucking is really taking this to the next level and really caring about oysters and the art of shuck. And all of those things, um, I guess, have made me the person who I am today. But the art of actually shucking, I guess, really is the same answer. My dad instilled in me why it's important to properly shuck an oyster. So to answer your question in short, my dad, because if you didn't shuck an oyster properly, you could not maximize on your profit. So the way he taught me to shuck oysters is if you shuck an oyster properly, it will hold water. Now our goal was to get as least we didn't want to fill a whole pint jar of oysters up with oysters. So we knew, or he knew because he's the science guy behind it, if you shuck your oysters correctly, that oyster will hold water. So if the oyster holds water, what happens? You don't have to put that many oysters in the jar now. So that was the first reason for really getting into the art of shuck, wanting to shuck each oyster perfectly. Next was once I got to restaurants and I saw how the shucker beside me shucked and how I shucked, and then looking at my plate of oysters and looking at their plate of oysters. And really, this is when you can tell oysters are good or bad, rather. Not good or bad, but if the shuck is good or bad. Now, if you get a plate of oysters and they're not properly shucked, you really don't pay attention to it. It doesn't matter because you're just slurping the oyster or, eating the oyster. But if you get some of the oysters that are shucked nice, some of the oysters that are shucked not so nice, now you're like, oh, well, what's wrong with that oyster? Because you have something to compare it with. So, for me, it was about not just elevating myself or putting myself on a place where I'm setting myself apart, but also to uplift the guy beside me. Because sometimes they just don't know, just like the consumer who was eating the oyster. So for me, it's about let's all get to the same level And once you get to a higher level, or where I'm at, I don't want to say I'm higher, but once you get to a better level of shucking, that's going to make me compete against myself, because now you're on my level. Now we can compete. Now we can start messing around with speed. Now we can start messing around with displays and how they look on the plate. And now it's a good time.
Right on. You know, that's awesome. Like one of my favorite things, like, you know, when you're shucking with somebody, right? And you open up a perfect oyster, like out of 500 oysters, this one's better than all the rest of those, right? And you have to just show somebody, you know what I mean? No words need to be spoken. You just need to hold the oyster long enough for the guy beside you to see it and nod, you know?
I'm gonna
I
be
kind of live.
honest, those are the oysters that I put to the side. If anybody knows me, they know I don't eat a lot of oysters, but I cannot pass up a perfectly shucked oyster.
I
I
know I'm the
can't pass
same,
a
bro.
perfectly shucked oyster. Oh, I'm eating that myself.
Yeah, yeah, I'm the same. People say, "What's your favorite?" This one right here. Right on, Gardner. No, that's great. And you've kind of answered my question a little bit, my follow-up question, which, you know, started with how has your approach to oyster shucking evolved over time, and what have you learned along the way? Some of the biggest challenges you've faced and how you've overcome them.
I'm gonna say, of course, I've evolved because um I know my worth now,
Right.
and I'm not shy about it.
Hmm.
I think starting off, nah, I know starting off, I did so much shucking. It was literally my goal to shuck every single day. That was just one piece of the goal. The other part of the goal was I wanted to be known for oysters. I wanted every time somebody think about oysters, want oysters, dream about oysters, they're also thinking, dreaming, wanting me, because I wanted to be associated with oysters. So that's been my goal, is when somebody wants oysters, they think of Gardner, they think of Oyster Ninja, they think of Oyster SS Shucking. That's my goal. Um, so literally every day it was my goal to shuck oysters.
Hmm.
Um, Now with that, I put myself in predicaments where I wasn't always held to my value, or I wasn't always paid my value. Sometimes it panned out where I would get another job or get another gig, or somebody, remembers me for a party that's coming up, and it worked out. Other times it's just time sacrifice, and you just charge it to the game. Now, I'm not
Hmm.
saying this in a foul manner or anything. I'm just saying sometimes you do have to pay those dues. Um, I'm just saying now those dues are paid.
Right, right, right,
Those dues are
right.
paid.
I gotcha.
And I'm not going down that road. I can't go back down that road. It's not possible, because I know my value.
Yeah, yeah. Do you feel that there's ever been times where you were in over your head in an event or in a gig in any way?
Um, Not because I was literally in over my head, but because the person that hired me held me to another standard that I wasn't familiar with.
Okay.
And I think it could have easily been a conversation that got us at the same standard. But
Yeah,
because she had an idea and I had an idea, we were not aligned. So that's
yeah,
been a
yeah.
learning lesson.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's been a learning lesson.
Right. Can you share any memorable or crazy stories from your experience as a shucker?
Of course, yeah. You know, I was at MGM National Harbor doing an event,
Yeah.
and we're shucking oysters. Actually, no, I wasn't. I was somewhere in DC. I want to say maybe Ronald Reagan building or some one of those big buildings down there. And I'm shucking with my friend Jordy from up in Baltimore. And the guy, we're shucking oysters, shucking oysters. The guy comes by, puts his oysters on the platter, and I'm looking, I'm like, nah, nah. So he leaves, he goes, and then he comes back, and he was like, "So, how do you eat these?" and then he holds up a oyster shell that hasn't been shucked before. I mean, it hasn't been shucked yet. I was like, yeah, you got to open that first, buddy. So he just picked, like, we had, we just had some oysters just on up for display,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so that was funny. It was more funny, of course, in the moment. I feel like I didn't really portray that scenario in a funny way, but it was funny. We were dying laughing because he was like, "How do you eat this?" Um, let's see.
Hey, listen, that happens a lot, dude. That's happened at least half a dozen times that I can
Really?
recall. Yeah, I
Really?
like I've watched people pick up the oyster and put cocktail sauce on the shell. Like, and then they're looking at
Wow.
me and they're like, "You didn't shuck this one properly." It's like, whoa.
Right. That's crazy.
Because,
Yeah, I
like you're
thought,
saying, right? I've got my unshucked ones in a pile there, and I'm
yeah.
shucking them and I'm placing them. Or if I'm at a vendor style event, then they're unshucked and they're on a plate shucked.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but the people would come up and just grab them and think that they're ready to eat and then
Right.
complain. Wait, this one's not open properly.
Hold your horses. Hold your horses.
When we talk about the oyster industry, there are actually so many facets to it, right? And you and I represent a part of that. So how do you visualize the future of the oyster industry? And I'm talking from a production, marketing, distribution, handling, and presentation point of view, right? And I know you've seen these places. Like, I've taken you to some of these places. You see the oysters in the water, you see them getting boxed up, you know that they're getting sent and distributed all over North America. And I mean, even put on airplanes and shipped abroad, right? But then so think of all of those factors, and then you factor in the restaurant or the establishment or the gig shucker that's eventually purchasing those oysters and then serving them to people. So factoring all that in, how do you visualize the future with yourself playing a role in that industry, in that culture?
Man, that's another good one, Jason, man. You're taking this to a whole nother level.
Oh, thank you. I try to ask less questions, but maybe questions that cover a broad range of topics, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. I think the future is bright, man. I feel like because of people like you, people like me, educators like Julie and Patrick with Oyster Master Guild, other oyster shuckers and oyster educators, um, the future is very bright. I think that in our own ways, we are all leaders in the industry presently. Um, and I always tell this story, even when I started a podcast. The reason why I started a podcast is because I couldn't find any information about oysters, um, or anything that was digestible, and that's the key, the root, the foundation to my information is I want to make it digestible, and not just spray out big words and fancy language and all that bull. That's not cool. So I think the future is bright for oysters in this community. I think we promote good shucking. We promote education, knowing where the oysters come from, knowing the story of the farmer. If it's a co-op, knowing that information. Julie and Patrick, like I said, really deep diving in different sections. And I think that's also a positive. And I think the Oyster Master Guild is baby stepping right now. But I think with a small pivot, it's going to explode. It has the potential to explode, rather.
Because more people, just more oysters are expected to continue. We're going to grow more oysters, and we're going to see those markets grow. Is that why you really feel that that's the case?
That yes, for sure. This is this is the prehistoric time for oysters. I feel, and granted, we know where oysters were previously, like heavily stocked, and we know some over harvesting happened. But I think like now we are really educating ourselves and deep diving in educating ourselves on not letting that happen again, and also replenish what we took. I think there's a ways to go, but we are we are en route to making things great again.
That's fantastic, Gardner. Thank you. And so you're just gonna stay. So I guess so to sort of follow up my question, then your role specifically in that, do you feel that you're going to keep shucking and you're going to be out there shucking anyway, so you can just continue to talk to people about oysters and where they come from and the people growing them and how they're working with the shoreline and all that?
I don't think so.
Mm.
I don't think so. I think this is my lane right here. Telling the stories.
Mm.
Whether it's visual or audio, I think my role is and should be as a storyteller, um, to spread stories that are trying to change and make change, and help things that are pivoting, help um, get the ball rolling in whatever lane it may be. It could be oyster shucking, it could be oyster growing, it could be oyster educating. Whatever road or lane that is, I want to be the driver for change, by help
Yeah.
sharing their story. I'm just one part of it. It's my part, it's their part, it's the consumer's part, it's the listener's part, the viewer part, you know, and then it's just a ball of change. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oyster shucking is cool, but I just see myself in another role.
Feel ya.
Yeah.
Feel ya. All right. Okay. So, Gardner, then in that case, what advice would you give to the next generation of shuckers looking to keep the tradition alive?
Um, I'm gonna say to educate yourself. Education is key. I would not be here now if it wasn't for educating myself on an oyster. That's what I consider my job is oyster shucking. So why wouldn't I educate myself about the multi-faceted oyster? It's so deep, it's so complex. It is our world, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's so mysterious, but it's not. You know what I mean? Like if you talk to an oyster farmer, they're gonna tell you they know every single thing about that growing process. You know, if you
Mm-hmm.
talk to an oyster shucker, they know every single thing about shucking that oyster. If you talk to a sommelier or somebody just loves eating oysters, they're gonna tell you about the different flavors, different textures. They're gonna tell you all about the best restaurants to go to, you know, who sources the best oysters. So it's so the future is bright for oyster shuckers. Also, just care, and once you start caring, your whole world is going to change because people are going to see something in you and they're going to be drawn to you. Now, once people are drawn to you, it's now up to you to use that attention and use that light to kind of light your path.
Mm.
So I'll say that educate yourself, create an audience, and then use that audience to drive your path to I guess make whatever lane you want. Don't change. Don't go this way and go that way. Get in a lane, stay in it. The lane can be wide, but just get in that lane and stay in it.
All right, right on, Gardner. Thanks. No, that's just about all the questions I had.
I'm trying to be
Um,
like you, Jason.
Thank you.
I'm trying to be like
Well,
you, man.
I appreciate you saying so. Thank you. I mean, stay humble. That's the one thing that we can. I don't know about you, but I find us oyster shuckers, we love to talk, right? We love to talk in front of crowds or groups of people as
Oh
well. At
yeah.
least I do.
Yeah.
And maybe let's talk about this right now. Let's hash this out a little bit right now, right? Going back to like when you got the shucking bug, because I can tell you from my own experience, when I got the shucking bug, it was because I was in front of these people who were loving oysters And I was shucking those oysters, and they were listening to everything I said. And I was just a person who happened to really like that attention. And then, I was also the type of person who really liked shucking the oysters too, for whatever reason. I didn't mind. I'll take that box of oysters and go over in that table, right? And this is in the dish pit for Pete's sake, right? And then, yeah, whatever. I'm the guy from PEI. I'll shuck the oysters, right? I didn't, start shucking, and then just keep shut. And then when you're doing it in front of people, it's like, wow, now I'm hooked on this. And then it was like, now I was obsessed with learning more in order to be able to say more to those people so that they would hang on even more words that I had to say. Right?
That sounds exactly right, man. And I think that is the bug. And I always joke around and say, I always wanted to be the cool kid. But I think that might be true. I think it might be true. And it's funny because at the same time, you know, a lot of times I get drained from putting on that show.
Mm.
Um, because it is draining.
I think it's because it's a high energy thing, and then people get excited about putting sauces on it, and so then
Yeah.
there's hubbub about that, and
Yeah.
but you touched on it earlier, and we didn't really get to finish, or we kind of jumped, which was that how it drains you, and when you're putting on that show,
Yes.
how it drains you, and because those people want a piece of that, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of them can't shuck like we shuck.
Right, right,
And
right.
they wish they could. And when they're there having a good time, and we seem like this wealth of knowledge about oysters, and shells are flying and hands are moving super quick and every oyster is perfect and the people are, and everything is just awesome. People really, and they envy that somehow.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to say it because, and I think that's also another selling point for, actually even hiring, me or my service is, I think the number one thing people say is like, oh, if you wasn't here, John would be shucking oysters, but he wouldn't be shucking oysters that fast, and then John comes up like, yeah, I'll do three for, whatever, whatever. But, get that all the time, but it's very draining, man.
Yeah, yeah.
And especially during this time of the year, I every year it seems like I forget that this time of the year is so daggone busy.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm just really not prepped because I'm going like on a downhill where business is slowing up, and then pop, you get all these last minute holiday parties,
Right.
which the holidays are the same date every year. I'm not complaining, but I'm just saying with a little prep,
Yeah, yeah.
we could be planning a little bit ahead of time.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but it's
Right.
all good. It's honestly part of the business. Um, but it's mentally draining.
Hmm.
It's physically draining also, but it's definitely mentally draining. To it's like, it's all it is a natural high. And I'm so glad it's a natural high because we've been together
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I could, I could, I can drink with the best of them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm currently about a month and a half into like no drinks, no alcohol.
All right. Good for you.
And I'm so glad that shucking is a natural high.
Yeah.
I still get that feel good feeling when I'm shucking oysters,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
A lot of places can't shuck oysters well. They're not specialists in it. How
You
many
said it.
times?
I didn't say
I'm,
that.
yeah, well,
I
I'm
didn't say it,
saying it.
Jason.
I'm saying it. I'm saying a lot of places you go and you think you're getting a great oyster experience, you
Yeah.
may just be getting okay oysters,
Right.
and they're probably not shucked well. And some people might not care, but for those of us who know what the
Hmm.
ultimate is, what the best is, what the perfectly shucked oyster actually is, it makes a big difference, right?
It does.
And there are places that should know better. And maybe it's just that they have highly trained kitchen staff and chefs working there and sous chefs, but the problem is that they don't have enough oysters to really get enough practice to get good at it.
Hmm.
That could totally be it, right? Because let's be realistic, Gardner, you and I know that until you've shucked 10,000 oysters, you haven't shucked one. right? Like, really, if you, yeah, okay, fine. Like, I had this guy 2 summers ago. He's like, yeah, I shucked almost 1,000 oysters this summer,
Okay. Fair enough.
like serving me the oysters. And it's like, well, okay, I'm very actually impressed that you're enthusiastic about that.
Right.
Right. But come back to me when you hit 10,000,
Mm-hmm.
and then I will be extremely enthusiastic for you. You know what I mean?
Right, right. No, I get it.
But until then, and he wasn't doing a great job shucking. He was doing things that you could tell were bad habits that he learned because the person who taught him wasn't a professional shucker. It was just another person who taught him when that time came that he had to serve the oysters because he was working at that station, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, having a good teacher is very important. Um, Prime example. All I did was show Gator, not Isabella Gator, but Gator in DC Shucker now. A few things when I first met him. And with those few things and his entrepreneurial spirit, I would say he's bringing in more money than I am right now. And he hasn't been shucking a long time,
Mhm.
but all it takes is a few things to tweak skill, you know? Because shucking
Yeah.
is the same thing over and over, but a tweak can change the game.
That's right. Some people never get any better at it until they're shown a thing or two, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then, like you're saying, like, and I've had that before too, where people are like, wow, Jason, I'm so glad you showed me that. Once you showed me that, it unlocked this whole, yeah, well, I'm happy to offer those amazing tips. I had good teachers too. I learned from all the best teachers. So,
Right.
I get it. And you had a good
Yeah.
teacher too, right? I know somebody who had your teacher. Well, I
Um,
shouldn't say
s-
know somebody. I've talked to a guy who claims to have had the same teacher as you.
as my dad,
Yeah.
we were at an event and I'm shucking oysters, and he pulls up beside me. He's like, "Why do you shuck it like that? This is the way you showed me." I'm thinking to myself, he showed me one thing, and it blew my mind. How does that happen? I'm already shucking oysters. I already know how to shuck oysters. You showed me one thing, and I'm thinking, why did I never think of that? That's the power. That's the power of a
Yeah.
master shucker, a Jedi master shucker. That's the
Right.
power.
Right.
You want to
Right.
be blown away? Man, look, pull up with a master shucker.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel it. And you hit on this earlier, right? And we didn't talk about it. I know we've talked about it before, but it's a mentorship role. It's a mentorship thing with oysters, and it's the same in the kitchens, right? Like in the kitchens and the chefs, it's all teaching the people and building them up so that they can get and take the positions over eventually. That's kind of how it works. And then with shucking, it's the same thing. It's like you have to share that knowledge. You can't just keep it like, what am I going to do? Not teach people how to shuck because I'm afraid they'll be better shuckers than me? That's never going to
Mm-hmm.
happen. Like they're never going to
Yeah.
have my experiences in my life. So why would I even be worried about it? Am I afraid they're going to somehow get more gigs than me or something? Again, that's not something I'm pursuing or worried about. It's not about that. It's just about spreading, for me anyway, spreading the knowledge because we have this culture and you and I share this culture with these other shuckers in North America and around the world for that matter,
Yeah.
that we're the only people that do what we do. Even in the
Right.
restaurant business with all the chefs and all the everybody, we're still the only ones that do what we do at our level.
Yes. And it's crazy to think about that because you go somewhere, it's like, I know you. I follow you. I've seen your videos. Man, I stare at your videos. Man, I watch your videos over and over. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, damn, why you ain't share it then? Why you didn't? No, no, but it's those type of like, that kind of like, damn, all right, I'm doing something right, you know?
Yeah, yeah. You shucked oysters for me someplace. Yeah, I know. I get that
Yes,
all the time, right?
yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
But the sad part is I don't remember all of them.
I know you can't, but and like and eventually you know yourself, like after you've done it so many times for so many years and so many gigs, right? Like
Yeah.
eventually you start to see doubles and triples of people because you
So,
think you've
and that's what I go through in my day job. You know, it's crazy because I'm like, have I served this person oysters before? Sometimes I get enough guts up and I've actually had a couple people. So for people who don't know, I work in the DC government, and I've had a couple people come in my office. It's like, are you the Oyster Ninja? Are you SS Shucking? And it blindsides you because you got your professional, you got your suit and tie on, you got whatever demeanor going on, and then that fun side comes out because the Oyster Ninja's the fun alter ego,
yeah.
and it just blindsides like, yes, I am. Honestly, this was a great release. I don't know if you have any more follow-up questions.
What do you think makes a truly great oyster experience?
I could say 6 different oysters from Prince Edward Island. So you could taste 6 different oysters from the same region. Or I could say a oyster from the Chesapeake Bay, a oyster from the Atlantic Ocean, an oyster from Prince Edward Island, some caviar, maybe champagne
Mhm,
to
mhm.
bring it all together. I could say, or you could bring the West Coast in also. I think what makes a great oyster experience is one, friends eating, and they don't even have to be friends because once you come together and start eating oysters together, you're family.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Right on.
Two is multiple different oysters.
Okay.
So your taste buds can get involved in the party.
Mhm.
So tasting different oysters. Three, of course, most important is properly shucked. A good oyster shucker. Somebody who's knowledgeable about the oysters, knowledgeable about the oyster farms, and can shuck a good oyster. I think everything else is a plus.
All
Anything
right.
else that follows is a plus. Damn, that was good.
Right on.
I can feel the oyster experience. You know what I'm saying? I can
That's
feel the oyster experience.
that's dynamite.
Ain't no party like the Oyster Ninja party and the banjo and the banjo party.
Right on. Well, that's it for me, Gardner. That's all the questions I had. Thank you so much for your compliments on those questions, by the way. I really appreciate that. And, I'm glad to try and offer something new and exciting and look forward to all the exciting stuff that we're going to get to do in the future.
This episode is brought to you by Championship Shuckers and Banjo Oyster Knives by Jason the Banjo Woodside.
Yay.
But if you want a great knife, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or expert, this oyster knife is a great oyster knife. I'm standing 10 toes down on this oyster knife because I love it. And I've teamed up with Mr. Jason here. And believe me, it's worth every dollar. This knife is it's the perfect oyster knife. It's championship oyster shucker, um, championship shucker, but you don't have to be a competitive oyster shucker to use it. I love this knife. You can shuck from the back, front, side. It's great for all shucking. So, Jason, what's that website and where can they get these knives?
Go to Etsy, go to Etsy.com, type in Championship Shucker, and you'll come up with the listing for the web store. And then when you purchase your knife, check out with coupon code Oyster Ninja and look for a discount in the very near future.
Love it. Love it. Look, I'm telling y'all, you don't want to miss this opportunity to. And how many types of wood are you using right now, Jason?
Well, right now I've got 4 types of PEI wood that I'm using. I'm using PEI maple. It's so rugged and durable. That's the championship knife right there. Is the maple is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And then I've got PEI walnut, which looks just amazing. It's a darker wood and has this beautiful color to it. It looks antique even though it's brand new. It's stunning. And I've got some PEI yellow birch, which is the best of both of those worlds. It's relatively lightweight, but it's got a real ruggedness to it, and it repels water. It's very tightly knit. Gardner's got a banjo right there. That one's made out of Quebec maple right there. It's the time of year for banjos, Gardner. There's a lot of banjos going in stockings, so I'll be busy at that here in Buckaroo Banjo's workshop, getting ready.
Yeah. Um, Jason, and we've talked about this, but there's just something different about your knives because it's already wrapped up in love. You can tell how much love and effort you've put into your knives, by the way the knife is. I mean, by the way the blade is, by the way the handle is. That's not something you can just throw together. It takes time to make a quality knife, and your knife is definitely quality. I'm not just saying this because you're going to use code Oyster Ninja. I'm saying this because that's what it is. And I wouldn't lead you astray.
Thanks, Gardner. I appreciate you recognizing
Shocker's honor. Again, thank you, man. Appreciate you for flipping the seat on me. Again, guys, go follow Jason on social medias. Is it just Banjo Oyster Knife, or what's the socials now?
Well, there's a couple that I'm using. Ultimately, I'll have to combine them all. But so there's Banjo_Oyster_knife, Banjo Oyster Knife. And there's also Championship Shuckers. You can also try Shucker Mag.
Okay, roger that. So yeah, go follow Jason. I'm doing a call to action. Please, please, please subscribe to the Oyster Ninja podcast. My other call to action is leave a review. I promise you, Jason, my friend here, called me or texted me. I can't remember, but he was like, yo, Gardner, that was a great episode, a couple episodes again. And it touched my heart, not because, he really reached out, but because that feedback, just knowing that somebody listened to your work, found value in that work, and then liked it. OMG. So subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, tell a friend to tell a friend. And of course, on social media, the mobile oyster bar is SS Shucking. The podcast is Oyster Ninja PC. And until the next time, peace, love, and shuck on. Shalom, baby.